All right, all right. There we go. It is another Tuesday night. It's December 14th of 2021. Marketing made easy. And we are here to celebrate the end of the year. Not yet, but we're getting close. Hopefully you've had an awesome year, just like we have. Ups and downs all the time throughout. But here we are talking about marketing and getting your business out into the world to serve your corner of the world, your dream clients, and all that great stuff so you can impact more people. And hopefully, we are part of that journey for you on Tuesday nights to help you do that. Tonight, we're going to be talking a lot about marketing and story. And I'm so excited for this one. I'm going to bring in my good friend, Scott Vogel. And here he is, my friend.
How are you, my friend?
In the house. Oh, I'm great. Couldn't be any better. I'm all fresh and ready to go. I know you're a little bit tired more than me because
Yeah,
you didn't have a 3.5 hours sleep like I did. So I've got a little bit
no,
of an up on you.
we did a training and launched another product, and it was. I don't know, Joey, if I've ever had a time when I'd be like, you know what? I'm ready to launch. It's all good, and I've got another 2 weeks to do nothing. I don't
Yeah.
think that's ever happened in launching like over 100 things over the past
Well,
3
maybe
years.
you should come into one of my courses. I'll teach you how to do it so you can just turn it on and off without any pressure whatsoever.
Okay, yeah, I'll have to do that, Joey, sometime in the near future. And by the way, that was me that said yay. That's weird. And then Jean-Marc Cahy, if I pronounced that right, is the one that, yeah. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for letting me know that because if
yeah,
you are
sure.
in the group and you see the link, just if you can click on the link for the StreamYard link, then it will allow us to see your names. If you give StreamYard the permission to see who you are, and we can see who you are, and then we can give you some props like this that we're putting up on screen. Hey, good to see you,
There you
Daniel.
go.
Petra's in the house. Facebook
Hello,
granted me 2
Petra.
new badges. All right. What are
Wow.
those badges? I can't see them from here, but they must
Congratulations,
be
Petra.
awesome badges. All right, let's get into this topic. We are talking today about story. We talked, about this throughout the last 2 years of doing this. Episode 98, by the way, getting close on the big 100. So,
Wow.
yeah, amazing.
Unbelievable. It's crazy. That in itself, before we get into stories, actually is a story,
There's a
Joe,
story.
and will
Yeah,
become a story because we tell the story without purposely telling the story of kind of how we met. We were both in a group together and we just kind of watched each other. And at some point, we both were like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, vice versa. This guy knows what he's talking about. And then it just one day we were chatting, we got together, and it was like, hey, bro, would you be interested in helping me moderate the group? And then it turned into I'm doing this show and without getting into any details, but basically I could have started that, but it was 2019 and I was just in this group and I was using this thing and that, and I always watch people and I watch this guy, and now that I'm saying it, I watch this guy, and it's almost like I could bridge that into anything. It's kind of like dream clients are watching you all the time. I started with a story to hook them, and stories are just, it's our lives are stories.
yeah.
Everything is a story, and that's what makes them so powerful. Once upon a time.
Yeah, and I'm so intrigued by them because I'm not an author by any means, and even copywriting. I'm a copywriter. I'm always weary about saying I'm a copywriter. I'm a pretty good copy editor, but I can write copy pretty good. And when it comes to stories, you know, I'm always intrigued by frameworks and how to do them. We talked about the three. What is it? Grant? No, what is the 3 minute thingy? Forget what the name of it is now.
3 minute rule, Grant did
Yeah,
that.
three
Yeah.
minute rule. That's kind of a story framework.
It, it
You
is
know.
it is a story framework. It's just because remember when we were unpacking it,
Hmm.
we took all these little index cards and we wrote down everything. We rearranged them and looked at it as if we were going to tell a story and what came first and what logically came next and what's next. And then that's how a good story unfolds. That's how a good movie is.
Yeah,
Every movie is a story.
yeah,
And
for sure. Yeah.
You know that the model that I follow and when I write copy is the 18-step secret selling system that I modeled after Perry Belcher. And once you've done the basic things like, hey, get their attention, call out to them, make the promise, tell them what they're going to get, then it's like, okay, now why should I listen to you? And that, to me, the biggest piece of any copy I write is the connection story. I've got to tell a story that connects with the reader, the viewer, the listener, so that they can say, huh, I can relate to that. I can empathize with that. I understood his journey, his struggle, the pivot, the crossroad, the turning point when, and that's what makes it so powerful, because we're trained from little kids that once upon a time, everything's a story. Cartoons are a story. Movies are a story. Books are. That's how we learn, with a story.
Yeah, I'm going to try to simplify it for everyone listening as well, so we don't have to. Because I'm sure that you don't use 18 steps throughout your emails or little
No.
things like that. So I want to
Yeah.
simplify it for everybody. To that's where I was going with this. Is like I'm always intrigued
Yeah.
on how do I, because a sales letter is a sales letter and there's
Right.
different things, but then how do you communicate every day with people? You're not going to go through 18 steps, right? Do you agree with that?
No.
So
No.
then the story structure is pretty simple, or there's a lot of different
Oh
story
yeah.
structures. And I just finished reading, well, not finished, a couple of weeks ago, was Kendra Hall's Stories That
Stories
Stick.
that stick. Yeah.
Yeah, so I got some notes here that I want to share with everyone to help them, put together a simple story together. And like, there's only three parts of the story that you really
Right.
need, which is, the way things are before something changed,
Yeah.
the change part, and then the after part. Like, that's it. And to me, I love simplicity. So when people are asking me about how do you write copy, or how, if I'm teaching them in write marketing copy how to do something, it's always the simplicity of something. So it's like, okay, where and they don't want to be copywriters. They're not like
Right.
like us, we love it and everything, so they don't want to be
Yeah.
copy. So I'm trying to make everything really simple and think, okay, well, um you can write a story easily, because there's a situation, what happened to change the situation, and then what was the situation after. That's it. That's tell a story that
Well,
way.
Joey,
um
that's the basic formula for a testimonial as well. What was
for
my
sure.
what was my life like? When a proper testimonial that we help craft is a story. My life was
Right.
this. This is what was going on. Then this thing happened, and now here's what my life is like. And that's, you look at an origin story. You look at the hero's journey. You look at the hero's journey. It's basically simple. It's a story. Star Wars. Luke ventures out to do something. And that's what the way it was. Luke was out there and he was lost and he was just kind of looking for something. Then he gets his butt kicked and he gets slapped down and he goes back, and then, okay, that's what happened. And then all of a sudden he finds Yoda and the Force and this, and here's what life is like now. They
Right.
just happen to make it into 2 hours, but that's the framework of the story.
Right. Yeah, and I agree. Like, when you're writing any emails, this is where a lot of where you could spin anything toward the emotion to help people understand what it is you're doing, and so
Yeah,
they can identify with your product or service and all that. But it's not about your product. It's about the the characters that are in the story. And so that's what I want to talk about today, is like those little elements that
yeah,
make up the story. And those elements could be, or the characters could be, like, like you said, the testimony is a great example,
yeah,
because it has the identifiable
right,
character, which is the person,
yeah,
and then it's got, the points of change, and here's my after story. And if you take that framework and put that into a email, then you could continuously do that over and over again without making it a testimonial all the time. But that's
right.
the basic framework of it, which is brilliant, right? The way you brought that up, I love that.
It
So
is
that's the
brilliant.
identifiable character.
Yeah, and you do it all the time, Joey, in your emails. I've got a colleague, David Watson, who is brilliant at writing stories. All of his emails are stories. I mean, today, I did a training and I launched a product, and I didn't really have time. And I wrote an email, and the email subject line was, I did Andrea a disservice. Well,
Yeah.
that's the beginning of, well, what happened? What do you mean you did her a disservice? And then I basically say, the training went an hour and 10 minutes, and I didn't have time to really showcase what I wanted to do to help her. So here's what's going on. That was a tiny little story. I didn't go start with, hey, there's a discount on this new thing and blah, blah, blah. It was like, I really did her a disservice. And that was the truth.
Yeah. And it's true. Like, and that's kind of the story. Like, well, today we were on the call and with Andrea,
Yeah.
boom, that's the
Yeah.
identifiable character, which is Andrea,
Yeah.
right? Is
Yeah.
you're on the call with Andrea today, and
Yep.
here's what happened. She's talking about blah blah blah, and
Right.
then I was going to do this. I didn't have any.
We're out of time.
Yeah,
And
we're out of time, and then I realized that bloom, and that's the change right there. Is like that change is
yep.
here, and here we are today
Yep.
now, and this is what I want to offer you, or I want to share with you, and that's the whatever. Like, I think there still needs to be a part of like what happened on the call that was
Oh,
awesome
yeah.
for
Yeah.
people, and so I just wanted to leave it there. Everybody had
Yeah.
they got this epiphany or whatever it was,
Right.
which brings me to the point of this email. I didn't have time to do
Right.
this thing, which is why I'm writing this email. And that whole story ties right into the whole reason you're writing the email, which is great because it's like, why are you telling me this story? And then it's a better way to transition into. I didn't read your email yet, so
That's
but
okay. Just no.
but just to give people an idea of like how you can tie a story into
Right.
something else. You know,
Well, you've heard me talk about the Dale Carnegie organization and the Dale Carnegie training. And the beauty of that training was every week you showed up and you did a talk in front of the group. And it was a 1 or 2 minute. That was it. And
yeah,
it basically was a story that in your life that you can tell that you learned a lesson from. And at the end of everyone, it was almost a call to action, and it was skinny down into 4 words if possible, which was, here's why I told you the story and here's what I want you to do. You're framing the story, and then you're taking the learning experience. It's kind of like when you speak from the platform or you do a keynote. The basic formula is make a point, tell a story, make a point, tell a story, make a point, tell a story, close. That's it. You tell a story, and in the story, you're making a point, the learning lesson that you want people to have. And people will pay attention to stories. People will read stories. People will watch stories. They don't really want to read long, drawn out copy unless they're like, I got to have this thing. I need to know everything about it.
yeah. But at the same time, the general. You're right. Painting the picture of the story is important to know that okay, I got to tell a story. Where this gets into how good is the story? That's what I really want to talk about
Yeah.
too. Like you
Yeah.
have to understand the elements of telling a good story.
Mhm.
Just not telling a story because
Right.
you and I mean, I've told billions of boring stories in my
Right.
life, and
Yeah.
that's why I'm so intrigued about okay, how do I tell a really compelling story that because I don't want to be an author and whatever. And one of the components of that is emotion. Like is so in again, I didn't read your email, but if there was, did you put an emotion of Andrea? Well, you'll pick on you because you brought up the email. So
No.
so then that would be another
Yeah.
extension of
Yep.
today on the call with Andrea, she was so excited about sharing her thing. Right, that's the emotion, and then that
Right.
ties in the
Yeah.
audience to like, oh my god, why was she so excited? And
Yep.
that's where
Yeah.
anybody can enhance the story.
Yep.
Where whatever I met an online marketer who is really down and out and feeling depressed, whatever, or overwhelmed. Like you have these emotions tied in. That's the things, and you need a from and I'm just stealing from what Kendra has as
Yeah.
the frameworks. I'm just reading from my notes here too. Is like the details of the normal, like the what's happening right now.
The normal.
Like the
Normal.
thing is what's going on right now, the emotion of it, the character of it, and a couple of little details about it. Because from what I read, it was one of the biggest things, and I'm guilty of this a lot too, is we leave out a lot of the details,
Yeah.
right? And you know me, I'm not a detailed guy in terms of the coaching stuff that I do. Like I don't need the details yet. Just give me the big picture and then I'll ask for details. So I think that has um confined me, I guess, in when I'm writing emails, right? Or just writing in general. I don't need to write the details. I'll just get to the point, right? So now
Yeah.
I'm kind of rethinking. Oh, wait a minute, maybe I'll put a couple more details in here. What do you think? Did did I freeze, or did you freeze, or did you hear me?
I think you froze, I froze, we froze. I think we just froze together.
Did you hear anything I said? Where what was the
Yeah,
last thing?
you just kind of like for the last 15 seconds were all,
Wow. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna turn off my Wi-Fi,
yeah,
and I'm gonna switch it over. So if I lose you, I don't think I'll lose you, but I'm gonna turn it off anyway.
no.
It'll take a second to jump. Okay. So let me repeat what I said. Are you with me now?
I am with you now.
Got it. Okay. Uh, in terms of, geez, what I said was pretty good. um, what was I saying? It was about the
We're talking about
emotion.
dangerous stories at stake, emotion, the normal, and putting emotion in. And you were saying maybe I should go look at my emails and see how I can.
Oh, I asked you if you'd put any emotion in with Andrea. You said no, and then I
Right.
talked about the excited part. Did you
Yep.
hear that
Yeah,
part?
we got all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then nah, I can't remember what I said, bro. It
Okay,
was it
that's okay.
was it'll come back to me
All
somehow.
right,
It was of an
let me let
extension
me
of
let
that.
me go on to what you're talking about, Joey, because it is when you watch a great movie and you identify with the character, that's the identifiable character. You identify with the emotions that the character is experiencing and the flaws in the character because that's who we are. We are imperfect human beings, and we want to relate to somebody. We don't want to see the hero starts as the hero. We want to see the hero who, like I said back in Star Wars, Luke goes out and gets slammed down and beaten up and almost killed and that, and then he comes back home. And we've all been there. We all know what it's like to go out into the world and try something, whether it's in business, whether it's in life, whether it's in relationships, and get smacked down, and the pain and the discomfort and the sadness, and everyone's like, yeah, I remember when that happened to me. And you empathize with it, and that's what makes a great character. And it doesn't take a long time. Like you said, the other day I was on a call with this fellow who was despondent. He was ready to give it up and this and that. He had tried everything. He totally in debt, every credit card. His wife was ready to leave him. Okay, that took, I think, what, maybe 10 seconds. And everybody's like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So that brings me back to what I was talking about. What you just said, the last piece of it. And I'm going to come back to you, AP. Um, going to come back to you because I want to talk to you too. Which was the detail you just stuck in right at the end. His wife was about to leave him.
yeah,
So what I was talking about there was the details and how important they are to put in, and that when I'm writing, I'm this, as you know, I'm this big picture guy. I don't
yeah,
like when I'm coaching. I don't look at details. I just give me the picture, give me the big thingy, and then if I need details, I'll ask you, and I'll go deeper in what I need to know. Right? And I think that has handcuffed me when I write because I don't put a lot of details in a lot of times because I'm just trying to get to the point. So now I'm rethinking, thinking,
right,
okay, well, maybe I got to put in a couple more little details,
yeah,
just like you just did,
yeah,
which was he was this, this, and this. Here's the emotion. And by the way, his wife was going to leave him. Like
yeah,
that's a detail we were like, huh.
yeah.
So it's really important, I think, to put the details. And so my question was, which now I know the answer already, but I'll ask you anyway, was what do you think about putting in the details?
It's 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 first of all, it's important to put the details in. It's even more important to craft the details properly. That, like I said, and his wife was ready to leave him. There's no wasted words there. I don't have to paint any picture. His wife was ready to leave him, or he came home and his wife is packing her bags. Either of those two are powerful enough in somebody could visualize that and see that. I did need to say he walked into the house and it was a two-story brownstone, and he came in and he walked up the stairs that were carpeted. No, his wife was ready to leave him. That's enough to build a story around.
And you also, I want to also point out here that when we're talking about the details too, here is, or any story, it has to be another big mistake is that you don't tell a story just for the sake of telling a story. It has to be related to the goal of what you're trying to accomplish. So
Yeah,
what you said there, is not only an open loop, it's intriguing because it's like, well, this guy's talking about this or whatever it was, and then the wife is about to leave him, which kind of disconnects the story almost, but then you bring it back in because like that's the open loop. Why was she about to leave him? Did
Yeah.
they have an argument? Have they been arguing before and this was the last straw or whatever? And it's just right. It
Yeah.
helps to tie it into the goal of the whole story in the first place of what you're trying to sell.
Mhm.
Correct?
Correct. Yeah. And I know Kendra talks a lot about hospitals and fundraising and how she uses the story very, very effectively in that rather than, what she proved it was rather than having the CEO or somebody go up and talk about this and the money and that, they found somebody that they could relate to, somebody that had a story, somebody who was struggling in that and came to the hospital and the hospital was able to help them out and the normal and then what happened and then the new normal.
Yeah,
And people
exactly.
can get behind that, a
Hmm.
story.
Yeah.
People will, it's like, you know, one of the most effective emails I wrote in the sequence a while ago, it was, foul shack, the opponent's coach said. And it basically went in to tell a quick story that Shaquille O'Neal's free throw shooting was the worst, pretty much in the league, without getting into details. And they would rather slow his momentum down, get him to the foul line, knowing that he might maybe make one of two. And then that went into he ended up hiring a coach, and that was the theme of the email was why it's so important to have a coach and what happened. And then in the championships, he was able to do this and that and that and the other thing.
Yeah.
And again, the audience reading that were people who would appreciate a story about a well-renowned character who was flawed and then fixed it, almost kind of like a mini hero's journey in a way.
Hmm. And AP, I agree with you about the so the you're talking about the finance in the mortgage industry. I was associated with that because in real estate investing, I had clients who were mortgage brokers, financial advisors, things like that. And the way that I helped them market was to step away from just the norm of numbers and data and all this stuff and tell stories about
Right.
their clients or about where people wanted to be and all these other things. So it's really important for you to stand out as that person, especially in an industry that is so very cold. And then
Yeah.
no disrespect to you, but just the way the industry is, it's just numbers and data and all this. But when you warm it all up and you tell about these stories, people will be attracted to you, I believe. If that helps. If you have another question or I was off the mark there or something I didn't understand, please
And
put it in.
Joey, for AP, the finance and mortgage industry, and you know that industry very well, just from a story standpoint, you and I tell stories all the time. Instead of saying, "Hey, I'm a great copywriter," or "I'm a great marketer or funnel builder," it'll be like, I was on the phone the other day with this person, and they did this, and they did that, and this, and this, and that, and that, and that. And people are like, "Oh, that's cool." I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about somebody. I'm telling a story. And guess where your stories come from, Joey?
They come from real life.
Yeah, but where specifically do they come from, Joey?
Well, I don't know where you're going with this, but they're all over the place for me. Oh, from the Superpower Matrix. Yeah. Yeah.
Every story. I mean, I could look at anything here and it'll say my bar mitzvah. you know, I could have had a horse. Instead, I had a bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
There's just so many stories. And if we look at the point of a story and how to tie it in to be able to help people
Well,
make it.
there was a thread inside a couple of weeks ago in our group, in our Facebook group. I
Uh-huh.
forget what the question was now, but I asked a simple question, and there was a whole bunch of stories that people said.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I said, "Guys, if you look back at what you're telling me, there's a whole bunch of stories that you now have for marketing." And
Yeah.
it was a dumb question, like, "What's your favorite book?" or something like that. I don't know, whatever it was. And they're like, "Oh my god, this is," because this is what we overlook. And the other part of it is that when you're going through something like a downturn in the business or whatever is going on, like a crisis is happening or a situation, if you're you're in the middle of something, it's actually a story in the making.
Yeah.
And if you look at that and say, wait, what can I learn from this? What can I share from this? Then that's a story. but a lot of times we're just so afraid to look at our lives in the superpower matrix because of that. The personality part and the experiences part is important. So thank you for bringing that up because you're absolutely right.
Well, Joey, you and I have told stories about unsuccesses in the past or
Yeah.
failures or that. Like I could tell a story right now that's unfolding at this moment, which is what that email was all about today. I thought that she was going to teach today, train people for about 45 minutes, and then I'd have 15 minutes to go through and share with people this amazing thing that she had created. She went an hour and like 15 minutes. And when I edited the video, it was an hour and 10 minutes. And I was not going to then start 15, 20 minutes with
Hmm.
people. And I
Hmm.
just was like, so I told a story. And the story was I was ready to do this and that. It wasn't really put together the way I wanted to. And I decided that, you know what, I'm not doing this. And
Yeah,
that's a story
exactly.
in itself. Again, everyone that's been listening for 2 years knows how many things we've launched, and this is the first one that I was like, I walked out and went into the body worker, and I said, I don't like to use the word. I'll type it sometimes, declining suckage, but I blew today. It was just not, and that's where we go back to a show from maybe 4 weeks ago. Is okay. Why didn't it work? I know why it didn't work, and now I created the email of that, and that's a story in itself for somebody that's struggling with a launch or something, or did a launch and it didn't work out. Well, let's look at why, and then we go back to that. It's all stories, and
Well, okay, so you know what? As you're talking, I'm gonna come back to this, Petra, because I want to talk about that too. You bring up a brilliant point, but you know me, I'm ADD, and I don't want to miss
yeah,
out what he
yeah,
just said. So let's take another stab at your email. Not to say the one you sent was bad, but I just want to point out another point where another perspective we could go with, because what you went with is, and not one's right or wrong. I'm not trying to debate it, but I just want to give another perspective to show people how you could use what you just said. One is you were talking about Andrea today and her story and all that. You could also start out with that it's about you, but it's about her, and say, you know what, I feel really whatever bad or something like that
yeah,
because this is what happened today,
yeah.
and because you said I gave because we were talking about the emotion with Andrea, because you said she's I feel like we gave her a disservice today or whatever like
I
that.
gave Andrea disservice today.
Yeah, and then the emotion was on Andrea. So what I'm
Right.
trying to say is now we can switch the emotion to say
Yep.
I feel really bad
Oh
because
yeah.
I feel as though I gave, right, and then now the
Yep.
emotion is about you,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
there's two identifiable characters.
Yep.
You know where I'm going with this, right?
Oh, totally, completely. I could have rewritten that subject line right now and said, "I feel terrible." I really, Andrea just poured her heart out. She did an amazing job. She was excited. The training was fantastic. She was so excited that she went over like almost 20 minutes. And when I looked at the value stack or the offer that I was going to make, I realized that, you know what, people had to leave. It was over an hour, and I didn't have the time to do it justice. And I felt really bad about it because she worked so hard to put this thing together.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's amazing. So Petra, details have to relate. You're absolutely right. Tangible experience for the reader. So the visual of the wife packing her suitcase in order to leave him is very effective because there's a little detail that we attach to being lost or whatever the email is about. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
lost, frustrated, sad, broken, uh, destitute, all the different, what's the emotion that we're going for? And in that case, if I had gone a little further, it would be, she was sick and tired of it, of his, okay, this one's going to work, and this one's going to work. And oh, I promise this one's going to work. And this is the next one. Oh, no, 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 no. This is definitely, it's like, I could jump from there into bright and shiny object syndrome.
Well, I mean, if I was same thing as if I was writing about joining my mastermind or my coaching or
Right.
something like that, that could tie in because it's like, well, his wife is like finally saying that you've been saying this for years and years and years, and they get into arguments and blah blah blah. And saying
Yeah.
that's why you need a support system of people who
Right.
understand you.
Yeah.
It's not that your wife is bad; but there's not a
Yeah.
lot of people in the normal world who understand what you're going through, and that's what we're here for, right? And the whole story falls
Well,
right into place.
and again, Joey, we're jumping on this thing all over the place. We could go talk about a mastermind group from the wife wanting to leave.
That's what I just yeah, that's what I meant. Same
But
thing.
say, this is why you need a coach, or this is why you need to be in a
Right.
mastermind group, or this is why you need to be in a life purpose group, or this whatever it is that you need to do to get your life back, to get your marriage back, to get your sanity back, to get your time back, so you could be just like Joey and take 3-hour naps every day and then still not figure out what to do with the rest of his day because
Oh my god. It's too bad we weren't recording my journey in 2018 to 19 because it would be a whole different subject.
well, and again, Joey, that's why I love the connection story. And Kay is saying it here. During the crisis, we create new narration that often highlights our superpower. There, there has to be a crisis. There really has to be the butterfly has to metamorphosize from a caterpillar and go through the struggle. Anything that anybody that's anything went through something. There's
Mhm.
very few people that just woke up one day and it was like, hey, I just had this idea today, and now I'm a success. I've made all this money in that. That only happens on the internet ads.
Can you be a little bit more clear on what you are asking here, teen? I don't know what you're talking about. If you can just be a little more clear, and then we can answer that question for you. Hey, Lorna, good to see you. Lo-
Hello, Lorna.
Monica wrote my comment 25 minutes ago and forgot to press enter. Okay, there's another conversation going on that we're not involved in right now, Scott.
And
Teen,
again, Joey, I could jump in here again and do something and say, I'm devastated. I, I, I've never had anything that didn't work in the last 100 thingies. And that's just the way to start it. Well, what was it? What was the devastation? What was that? But then, of course, there we go. What happened? And then
yeah,
now, and I don't know what this other side of the story is yet. I'll know the other side of the story in about a week.
yeah.
Don't know the other side of the story.
Yeah. So we're talking today about stories and just the framework that I took from Kinder Hall, which is the stories that stick. If you wanted to grab that book, and there is three simple parts to writing a story. The first one is to start off with establishing like what is happening right now. What's the normal thing going on
Oh,
right now? Whether that's something bad going on or something good or confusion, overwhelm, doesn't matter. Like what's going on right now, and then the middle part is the change, like what changed, what happened, what changed in from the normal situation to now going into the new situation. Kendra calls it new normal. She calls the middle part explosion. So, like
yeah,
what exploded, what happened to make it change. And those are the three parts. Like I just like simplicity to try and tell a story. And that's what we're getting at is like those are the three components of telling a great story. And all the nuances that go in it. What we're talking about is the identifiable character. It's like who is the character in the story, and the character doesn't have to be, this like a character. In other words, it could just be simply uh, I was speaking to an online marketer, or I was
right.
speaking to somebody who's doing video editing,
Yeah,
or whatever that is. That's the character. In the example we've been using here is Andrea, one of Scott's video editors and character animation persons, right?
yeah,
And then there needs to also be emotion in it. Like, what did the character feel, or what's going on? What kind of an emotion? And then the significant moment is when something happens. Like, what happened, and why are you telling me this story? And then there also needs to be specific details, but not so much detail that it gets bogged down with details, but just enough that ties the story in together. Those are like the components of a story. So I'd love to hear from you if you have any questions about that we can help you with your stories, or maybe you've got a great story framework you'd like to share with us. Any thoughts, feedback, we'd love to hear from you. And it gives me a chance to invite you also into our heart-centered marketing club. That's our Facebook group where awesome humans are in there helping each other out with marketing, business, and just supporting each other when we do kind of get overwhelmed and need some support. It's awesome. We'd love to have you there if you are as well heart-centered and want to impact your corner of the world. Lorna, thank you. I use a lot of words when I write. I try to think of each word costing $1,000. Yep, that's great for the copy part of it. Still, it takes a few drafts to whittle it down. I don't usually do that in Facebook posts. They can stay long. That's all right. It's all good. But that's the draft. Like, maybe look at the draft, the Facebook post as a draft. And then you take that and repurpose that into an email. I do it all the time. I don't know about you, Scott, but I'm doing that all the time.
I repurpose everything everywhere. Like we we wrote the email. I sent the email to Andrea. Andrea's taking pieces of the email. She's going to make a Facebook post. You need to repurpose. You don't need to write everything all over and over and over again. We always pull things out of the copy and use it for something else.
Yeah, and Lorna, you're doing the right thing because um, I find when because I mean I'm coaching a lot of them on the right marketing copy side of it, and then I know the questions that come up with it where they always say I'm not a writer or I don't know how to write or anything else. And one of the biggest points I always need to stress is just write. Just doesn't matter how it comes out, what it sounds like, even if it doesn't you know run free, smoothly from one sentence and paragraph to the next. Don't worry about it. That's the hardest part for me to teach somebody. And even for myself, I do free writing and all that, and it's still I find myself wanting to edit. But Lauren, it sounds like you're doing this the right way. Just write it and don't worry about how long it is at the first part of it. Never use blah blah blah. We'll do old real estate saying.
Well, it goes to the concept of Jeffersonization. Thomas Jefferson said, the greatest of all talents is not using two words when one will do.
Right.
And I see that Kay asked, how do you decide what details to include?
Oh, there it is. Okay. Um, Want to answer that? Want to start answering that?
As much detail as possible to paint the picture, and as little detail as you can get away with to paint the picture. It's what do you need the reader, the viewer, the listener to envision and to feel? And what is the least amount of words that I could use in order to do that? And if she was sick and tired of it, she was packing her bags. And he was devastated. It was fraught. He didn't know what to do.
Yeah, and Kay as well. To Petra's point too, details are on both sides. One is like who is the reader. So an example, for example, would be if you're talking to an audience that grew up in the '80s, a detail might be a boombox
Yeah,
rather than they were listening to music. They were
right.
listening to music on the boombox. That's a detail.
Yep.
And that is a detail where that audience would identify with that. Ah, okay, cool. And that's all you really need. And then
Or
whatever it is relates to.
driving down, he popped in an 8-track.
Yeah.
That's it. There's no how big was the 8-track? What was the sound? What did it go in? No, he popped in an 8-track. If that audience is from that genre, they're going to go, oh yeah, I know what that is. I feel it. I can experience it.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
going back to Dale Carnegie, it was June 23rd, 1969. We were in my backyard. It was my birthday party. We were playing torpedo in the pool. I didn't know Rennie Edelson couldn't swim.
Yeah, so if I was editing that now, if you gave me that line, then I would add another detail to it, which was it was an a cold June whatever
Right.
because everybody thinks June is hot, and I would add a detail to it.
Yeah, exactly.
It was an whatever it was an unnormal or whatever the word is.
Uncharacteristic.
Yeah, uncharacteristic cold
Whatever.
June 13th, June whatever, right?
Well, what we just did, Joey, was we took a simple thing, we played with it a couple of times, we added an emotion, we added a little bit of local character, of local color to say, okay, I got it, I'm there. And that's the purpose of a story, is to bring somebody there that they can almost see it without having to watch a movie, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars to make.
Yeah. Lorna says, I like the quote. I don't know who said it. If I had more time and I've written you a shorter letter. Yeah. Who said that? I just recently read that.
Well, Joey, I've heard it, that it'd be like, if you want me to talk about marketing for 2 days, I'm ready to go right now. If you want me to talk about marketing for half a day, give me a week. If you want me to talk about marketing for 5 minutes, give me a month to prepare. And it's kind of the same concept. Yeah, I wish I had more time to write you a shorter letter.
I'm looking it up right now because I know I just read that.
And as you're looking that up, Kay said, cool, be selective to match the language and details to the audience. Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know who said it. There's too many notes that just came up. I don't know. Unless hang on a minute. I'm just going to try another thing here. Because now you got my interest peaked.
That's Lorna's job, is to pique your interest and keep you on your toes.
It is actually in Stories That Stick from Kendra. Maybe that's why I remember it. So now let me find within the note. No results. That's weird. The Discipline Pursuit. I don't know who did that. Anyway, but I love that quote. Oh, here, wait a minute. I did find the note, but it doesn't say who said it. Joke. I must apologize. If I had more time, I would have written a short letter. Doesn't say who said it.
Winston Churchill.
Okay. Love it. Thank you. I should have used the old Google.
I beat you to it. You were looking at the old Joey. I went right to Google. Not sure who's quite faster, Joey or sometimes faster.
Okay, think about the details, aka visuals you mentioned in your guided meditations. Those are the ones. Yep. Amazing. Let's see here. Close that up. Oop, put the wrong thingy. All right, and back to this here. So the mistakes that that I want to bring up that she talks about here is a couple of them, which was leaving out the details, so details that matter that fit the story, and then the other one was just using the story for the sake of using a story. You have to find the right story. You just can't just tell a story and try and tie it in. And I've seen this done a few times too, where again marketers are told tell stories, and they just tell a story and then it has nothing to do with the thing, but they use the whole transition thing. And that brings me to the reason why. And it's like, okay, that really doesn't relate, you know? And that's a mistake.
Yes.
There has to be some kind of relation to it.
I mean, you could bridge anything. We could talk about the reproductive life cycle of a bullfrog right now.
Right.
And then we could transition. And by the way, as long as we're talking about the reproductive life cycle of bullfrog, let's talk about the life cycle of a cell sequence.
Right.
Well, what that had nothing to do with anything. Just because the words, life cycle, and we used life cycle, it needed to be something that. Perfect example. Somebody was in the group, in and out for the last 2 years, and they just weren't ready. And then one day something happened in their life, and they said, "Joey, I'm ready now." And that proves your point to everybody that you're teaching in Elite and Atlas and VIP and all the other programs. It's one day is going to be too many to mention. Actually, probably not.
I hope not.
You'll have one day it'll be one. That's it. You're doing one program.
My goal is to count everything that I do on one hand, and less than that.
My goal is to have people that count on their hands what I'm doing. No, the difference between a simplifier and a multiplier. Lorna's got something here. There you go. Some people will say, "Show, don't tell." Edit this, boys. I'm not likely getting this quite right. There was a moon that night versus the light from the moon shone so bright it lit the path through the forest. I'd probably go further is, the deep dark night was scary as he walked into the forest, but suddenly, the light from the moon shone so bright it finally lit the path in front of him that he wasn't afraid anymore of where he was going. So what we just did, we threw in some emotions, we put a character in that.
Yeah, and so show don't tell. The light from the moon shone so bright it lit the path through the forest. Yeah, you're right, Laura. What you're saying is there was a moon that night versus what you just said. The last part is perfect. Yeah, because it's not there was just a moon. What did the moon do? And like now I can paint the picture. Now I know there was a moon, not only the moon, but now there's a forest. And why is there a forest? And why are you going in that? Why is there a path? What's the path about?
Yep.
There's so many areas you can go here.
Brilliant.
It's brilliant. Yeah, exactly. You're thinking the same word. Brilliant.
Yeah, it was. It was a perfect example of how you do this.
The one thing I want to talk about too is like how do you start writing the story? Even though I just gave you Kendra's like 3 parts of the story, and which she suggests for people who have trouble writing story is to start in the middle, like the actual transition or the change,
Right.
like what happened.
What happened?
What do you think about that?
Um, I'm of the belief of take me there first. That's just my belief in
No, but
writing.
when not no, when you're writing it,
Okay.
not when you send it out. When you're writing it. So if you're stuck, like, okay, how do I start the story? You're like, so start in the middle. Like
Yeah,
start in like, okay, what happened to this person? And
the
then you can
pivot, the
back up.
turning. Yeah.
Okay.
No, you're right. The pivot. It's kind of like you start. Yes, you start with the pivot, the transformation, the turning point, the defining moment, because that's the piece that's most important. How you got there and what happened after, that's kind of a foregone conclusion. We already know where we were. We already know what the pain was. We already know what the normal was. The explosion is what it's all about. And yes, you write that first because then it's like, okay, well, what happened before the explosion? It's kind of like coaching when you say, okay, we want to be 5 years down the road. Okay, what happened right before that? Like the day before. Okay, great. What was before that? Before that? Before that? And then we come back to today and say, oh, okay, there's the path. The explosion is all of a sudden, boom, this is what happened. One
Yeah,
day I met
yeah,
this
and you
guy and this thing happened, and then I this and that. I was like, my life changed forever. Okay, what
yeah,
was going on?
like I know that for me, there's sometimes going back to what I was just saying to you in response to when you publish the story, if it's in the middle, I like doing that sometimes because it draws the reader in for me. But we'll come back to that. The reason I'm saying the other part is to start in the middle if you're just writing and you don't know,
Right,
you're not always writing, is I can easily show you a billion pieces of starting email thingies or stories that have gone nowhere because
right,
I'm starting it and then I'm like, where the hell am I going with this? Right.
right,
So, and
right.
they just sit there and they're like kind of ideas. But I found myself in that situation a lot because I got this, hey, this is a great thingy. I don't even know what the point of this is. Whereas if you start with the point, it's so much easier to do what you just said, back
Well,
up
the
and
point you were supporting here was you start with the middle, with the explosion,
right,
because that's the
right,
easiest part to write.
to write.
But rather than trying to start from, okay, when did this first begin? I don't know when it really began. I do know when things changed. I know when the shift happened, when the transformation occurred. Write about that, and then it's going to come naturally both sides. It's kind of like when writing any sales letter or copy. I don't go through one, two, three, four, five because I might be like, I don't know what the subheadline is right now. I'll come back to it. I don't know really what this is. I'll come back to it. Let me go. Okay, I know what this is. I always know what the offer is pretty much.
Well,
So I
that's
can,
why they tell you to write the offer first.
right.
And so many people make that mistake. They don't write the offer. It's like the last thing they do. And then they're like, why didn't this thing sell? Because your offer sucks. Because it
Yeah.
was the last thing you do. It's kind of like there's a stupid parallel, but it doesn't even matter. It doesn't, this is not, this is where a story disconnect is going to happen. Let me predict this first. It's kind of like when I was when I was in the music DJing and the DJ booth would be the last thing that they put together,
Yeah.
meaning it's the most important thing in the whole freaking club, but it's the
Right.
last thing they put together, and they're
Yeah.
wondering why there's so much hum and noise and all that
Yep.
stuff
Yep.
coming.
And I
Like,
can go jump into the restaurant business I was in. The last thing they usually think about is the storeroom, or
yeah,
where the
or the stove.
where does the garbage pail go on a cooking line? Oops, let's just stick one right in the middle where everybody's walking.
Yeah, it's
And they,
crazy.
I don't know what I would equate that to, but same thing with the storeroom. Nobody figures you got this little closet or you got a refrigerator that's not big enough to hold food for 150 people. It's
Yeah,
like there's like one time I was looking, I was in a meeting with the architects designing a new country club, and I was helping consult with the kitchen and that. And they designed this gorgeous bar, and it was marble, like 4 inches thick all the way around. And I looked at them and I said, how are you going to get the kegs up into the bar? They're like, oh, just lift it up over the bar. I said, really? Have you ever lifted a 1984-ounce keg?
yeah,
And then the next question
exactly.
was, you got the refrigerators behind the bar in the closet. Where's the condensing unit? It's inside. I said, okay, that room's going to get about 120. I don't know where that story is going to, but anyway, if I was speaking in front of a group of hospitality people, I always told stories because that's what they love to do.
Well, but
Go.
in our world, you could still tie a story like that into copy or into
Yeah,
writing a sales letter, like because the whole point is write the most important thing first, which is the offer. So you can
yeah,
tell a story that has about the restaurant thingy, whatever, and then just go. They forget the most important thing to make the restaurant efficient, which is to get the food out and selling and all this stuff.
right.
And when it comes to copy, a lot of times we forget about the most important thing,
Yeah,
which is the the offer, and they write about all this fluff and all this other kind of stuff. Anyway,
you got a bunch of stuff in here, Joey.
yes, thank you for this. Really great dinner talk today. Thank you, Uncle Joey, reading from a book, and the family is engaged in the conversation. Thank you so much. You are welcome, Lorna. Sometimes you start the Facebook copy in the middle of the story. Sometimes that becomes the headline. Sometimes it gets moved. Yeah, because I want to come back to that in the middle of the story.
That's a great point that Lorna just made. And I just want to, before we continue reading, is I don't write subject lines until after I write the email for the
Yeah.
most part, because I'll look and see, okay, what do I got to pull out of that? Well, today I didn't. I was just exhausted. I was frustrated. I was discouraged, and I just needed to write an email. And that's the truth. I'll go rewrite another email in a couple of days when I'm fresher, and I'll probably play with what we were
Yeah,
talking about.
and sometimes that's the way that I work as well, Scott, because
Yeah,
if you ask a copywriter or somebody in copy, everybody's got their opinion on what's first. Is it the headline first? Is it the copy first? And then the subheads and all these other things. And it's all right. It's all right.
well, and
Like,
again, Joey, it's all when I'm writing copy a sequence for somebody and there's 10 or 12 emails, I will not write the headlines till the end. I'll just kind of roughly ideas of what I want to cover in each one. I'll write it and then I'll pull the headlines out. But if I'm just writing an email, it's like I got to get this email out. I'm going to write the subject line, I'm going to write the preview, and then I'm going to go write.
yeah,
It,
I kind of work the same way. Sometimes
yeah,
a subject line will come to me and it will inspire the email because
yeah,
I don't have the idea for the email until I'm writing, and then vice versa. Is I'm
right.
writing something and then I'll pull something out of it. What I'm trying to get across to everybody is that there's not just one way of doing it, and whatever way works for you is the right way
Yeah,
to write stuff. And coming back to the middle thing and starting a story in the middle to get people's attention. And it's not something you do every single time, but I think it's very powerful. And it brings me back to when I did my real estate investing speech tour thingy, and I slaved for what felt like months to write, to do the presentation. And I was memorizing and memorizing. And the last moment, like actually literally walking to the stage to the first time to present, I changed in my actually I don't even think I did that. I think it was right on stage when I
yeah,
decided to just start differently. And it wasn't like, the normal like, hey, my name's Joey and here's why, blah, blah, blah. I started right in the middle of a story. And the story started with a quote. It wasn't even that. It was like I started with um, whatever you do, don't lose our house. That's how I started. And everybody's like, what are you talking about?
yep,
And then I said it again. I go, whatever you do, don't lose our house.
yeah,
And then another dramatic pause. And I said, that's what my wife said to me before I invested $200,000 in real estate. And I had no freaking idea what I was doing.
yep,
And that was, I mean, to me, that was such and it wasn't me being like, hey, look how great I am. It was just like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to say. And then when I got off stage, all the other presenters were like, dude, like, wow, that was the most powerful thing I ever heard in my life. And it was only because of the way I started the story and
yep.
then told the story, because that story was in the middle of the thing, right? Right. And I just decided, I'm going to just tell a story here. And that's how I started all of those presentations, and they really went off well. So I think those dramatic points bring people into the story.
Joey, whenever I was speaking in front of whatever association or organization or that, I would start off with a story. I remember I was in somewhere, I have no idea where it was. And in this particular one, usually, and I'm not being, usually I had a car pick me up, this one I said, you know what, I want to take the van in. And I took the van in, it was dropping people off all over town. I can't tell you what city it was because there were too many of them. And I purposely did that. It was almost like the Kano Reeves that you posted, although I'm not Kano Reeves. But I wanted to just kind of get to know people that were traveling into this city, get to know the city a little bit. And I had all these stories. And by the time I got on the platform the next day, like, I was on the shuttle van on the way in, and this one gal, she was talking to me about this and such, and it totally related to the keynote I was giving for the special event industry, because it was somebody that was coming into a conference and this and that, and there's stories everywhere. You just told a great story about you got on stage. Now you could have done so much with that. It could have been about how you get on stage, how you make a presentation, how do you prepare, how do you not prepare, how do
Yeah,
you
it was like even changing things at the last minute, and
right.
then it becomes this thing that you never imagined, that people are like raving and standing ovations or
Yeah,
whatever it is, and fear, whatever. Like, yeah, so there's so many ways I could take that story. You're right.
yeah.
Uh,
Narcissa, I think we're at Narcissa, I believe, or
Wait a minute. Sometimes you start in the middle.
no,
Okay,
that's
so if I
Lauren.
want to write briefly, no, yeah, Narcissa, that's right. So if I want to write briefly on my cancer journey, you start from, well, there's a whole different, there's all kinds of places you could start from
Yeah,
in that story.
I mean, she's got. There's a list of. It could start out when she first found out about it. She could start out when symptoms, with the confusion, what was going even before she knew she had cancer. It could be the explosion. What happened? How did she deal with it? How did she treat it? It could be the aftermath. It could be how people looked at her, how she interacted with people. There's just so many ways to do that. And with yours in the explosion would be, what was the turning point? What changed? What was the pivot for you in that journey? And then you can go back to, oh, I remember I woke up. No, I remember it clearly like it was today. It was Sunday morning. I tried to get out of bed and I couldn't. My husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner looked at me and said, "What's wrong?"
And Narcissa, this doesn't mean it's one story.
Oh yeah,
Like your cancer can be thrown into, that's the wrong way to say it, but whatever. Like it can be used in stories throughout all of your communication, not every single email or
right.
communication, but there's different ways of reminding people of that story of how it relates to whatever it is that you're telling somebody. With my dad, I tell that cancer story all the time, and but it's not, it's off and on. And the whole line I always use is that, cancer told him you've only got 3 years left. Like that's
Right.
my catchphrase or something of what I learned from that whole experience with my dad. And I tie that into my entire purpose of why I'm here doing what I do every day, which is realizing that my dad sacrificed his life for business. And I see entrepreneurs do that every day. And that's by him passing at 60 at a young age. It was, and then grieving and not understanding. And then 4 years later, 5 years later, in my early 40s, realizing I was going down the same path was the pivotal point for me to say, this can't be, there's got to be a better way, because I don't want to end
Yeah.
up like my dad. And I see entrepreneurs do that every single day. So the way that I approach business today, the entire purpose is to stop entrepreneurs from sacrificing their life because of that story. But I tell that different ways. The
Oh
way I
yeah.
just told it right now is just from the heart. It's not memorized. It's not like I can tell it a million different ways
Yeah.
and still
Joey,
tie in my dad's thing.
years ago, I remember starting a full day seminar in front of an audience of managers in Marriott Hotel in Tampa, Florida. And I walked in the room and I had the U shape set up and I had everybody in there and they were all sitting there like this with their hands across their chest. And I was like, never seen that before. And I kind of was like, what's going on here? And they were like, doesn't matter what you try and teach us or what you try and tell us, our boss is not going to let it happen. And at that moment, I wanted to crawl back into my hotel room, get under the covers, give the money back, and run away. I was just like, the hell am I supposed to do? Well, you know what? That was probably not my dream client. I just took that story and it's like dream client connection. I really should have, instead of just, God, I want this, I want more, I want the next gig. Was that really my dream client? Well, no, she wasn't. And just,
Exactly.
again, that story, I could spin that probably 20 different ways right now. I can go in so many different places. And that's the beauty of a story. If you just write, buy my thing because it's got all this stuff and benefits, you're pretty much done
Hmm.
right there.
I think
Then, like
we're
Joey said, write the Facebook post, then edit. Years ago, after writing ad copy to get something half decent, I sent an email to my list, which my coach subscribed to. He replied saying, "This is great ad copy. Don't write ad copy anymore, just write emails." I still do that most of the time. Brilliant again.
okay. She's got it good. Thank you. Do you mind, Matt? That helped me a lot when I planned for my book on caregiving. I started doing it and what happened each year, then by topic, by lessons learned. Yeah.
Do you
This
mind
is
that, Joey?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah, I do not.
I do kind of everything. So it just again depends on the state of my brain that day.
And for me, it's whiteboard, it's pen pad, it's that, it's uh, I've got this copy here I'm playing with, and it's all I write it out, I type it, I print it out, I write it, I print it, I interview them, I listen to the audio. It's all of that.
Hmm.
I don't do a mind map. That's just nothing that my brain ever decided was going to work. I played with different software, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah. I love whiteboarding as well. I do a lot of it on
Yeah.
my little whiteboard thingies here and write a lot of notes. But I'm more of a digital person, so I'm taking a lot of notes and highlighting and bolding and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's where a lot of the ideas come from.
Lorna says, my book about caregiving starts 2 years after my husband passed away. Second chapter is the day he walked into our apartment and told me he had cancer.
Yep. What is mind mapping? Um, it's just a way for you to dump what's in your brain on a canvas, and it doesn't matter the the organization of it. You just dump ideas all over the place, and it allows you, and at least the software part of it, because you can still do a mind map on whiteboards and paper if you want to, but on the software, then allows you to take the ideas that are all over the place and kind of combine them into categories, topics, things like that. So mind
Yeah.
map is just a way for you to.
I equated Monica to a wagon wheel, and the center is the main topic, and then all the spokes coming out are like all the things I want to talk about. And if the middle is I want to talk about dream clients, and that's the basics of what I'm writing about, then it might be who are they, and how do I find them, and what's their language, and then okay, how do I find them? Well, am I going to look in social media? Am I going to use this or use that? And so you're like kind of have all these extensions here, and they all lead back. And it's done with software that enables you to just move things around and type in and add little thingies and lines and make this go here and add this in subcategories and explode it and open it and have subcategories underneath it. Was that a good explanation there, Joey?
Yeah, it's kind of it. Like to me, it's just like just throwing ideas out without having the structure in place yet.
Yeah.
That's what mind mapping is for. It's for creatives more, I think, than more logical people, because as a creative, when I throw something at the wall, that sparks a whole other idea, and I have no idea how it's going to tie back.
Yep.
So it if I don't allow those ideas to come out, it will stagnate. I'll just stagnate. So a mind map allows me to just throw out random ideas, because you might, like you just said, like as you were talking, my brain's going, well, how do you find them? And
Right.
immediately I'm going, well, Facebook groups, this and that, but that has nothing to do with well, it does have something to do with that, but it's like, well, how am I
Right.
going to tie those in right
Yeah.
now? So you just throw those ideas, Facebook group, LinkedIn group. Then the LinkedIn group might be connected to, you might have like, well, SEO. Hey, SEO. Am I going to talk about SEO? I don't know. Throw SEO out there. It's just
Right.
these ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gord loves mind mapping. Joey Ragona got me inspired to use it again. I find I can free flow with my thoughts down and organize it at a later time. Exactly right. Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. Just throwing ideas out. Amazing. There's one thing I wanted to talk about or ask.
So we've been
Um,
talking about storytelling, Joey, and I know that you basically presented a couple of times a simple formula that Kindra Hall and Stories That Stick talks about, which is starting out with not necessarily writing first, but what is the normal? What's going on your world, in your client's world, in the state of whatever it is. Then the explosion is, okay, this is what happened. This is the thing. This is the turning point, the pivot, the change, the the defining moment. And then the next part of it is the new normal, as she calls it. What is life like now? And we've also talked about it. A great testimonial is the same thing. My life was like this. I was struggling. I was suffering. Or my life was like this, and I really wished I could have a better relationship. And I really wanted to. And then all of a sudden, this thing happened. I found this. I found this dating site. I found the woman of my dreams here. And now my life is amazing and this and that because of these things that happened. I just put those three things together. That's what we've been talking about. And one of the important elements you pointed out is in copywriting, the product we figure out first, and we write the product first. In a story, you might want to write the explosion first, because everybody knows the explosion, and that's the one that's going to connect you deeply to your audience, is the explosion, because that's what they're looking for. They want to relate to and empathize with the normal and the new normal, because they want the new normal. They are probably experiencing some of the elements of the normal. It's the explosion that they're like, okay, how did he or she do that? What was that? How do I have that?
Yeah, and a really important piece of this is that identifiable character, the character that we connect to. And a lot of times, and again, I'm not pointing any fingers because I've made this mistake a million times. It's not even if we are the identifiable character is us, that's fine. But it's not a group of people. It's not this massive people. It's a
Right.
specific thing or
Yeah.
person
Yeah.
that the audience can identify with. And
Mhm.
that's where the emotion comes in. Or my client who was this, that the client is the identifiable character. The emotion they're feeling is this, and then the specific details of the client or whatever. Your Andrea, you know,
Mhm.
the identifiable character.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing, which I admittedly don't do a lot of, enough to identify a character, which is why I thought this topic was good to bring up, because now I'm going to try to do a little bit more of that
Yeah,
is
it
is
was
bring
a
that up.
great topic as always, Joey, because we tend to forget stories. I know I do. You reminded me that I need to start telling some more stories. I'm about to write some copy in the next day or two, and there's an important story in it, which you've heard me call a connection story, because that to me is one of the most important pieces of any copy, is the story, the connection. Because I don't care about the features and the benefits. I kind of do. I care about the story. It's like we've talked about, when you finally go and do, or if we do an event, people are going to want to come to hang out with us.
Right.
They want to they want to hang out with us and the people that we hang out with. It's not going to be like, I can't wait to learn all this cool new stuff. You've already taught them everything they need to know.
Right. Right. It works for logical people too. They just tend to be much neater. Yeah, true. I'm
That's
not
why it
saying
doesn't work for me, Lorna. I'm totally illogical.
it just takes them longer to put it together, I guess.
Takes me longer than the average bear.
I get lost in the woods last week, and my experience made me think a lot about the challenges clients have in trying to find their way to success on YouTube. That's a perfect story. That's
That's a
a
great story. It was
that's
blah, blah. It was cold out. I was this and that, and I could barely see, and this and that. And then this happened and this happened. And I realized it's kind of the same thing about people trying to find their way on YouTube. It's cold out there. It's lonely. They can't see. They're lost. Boom.
it's so as when we really look back, when we zoom out of our own lives
Yeah.
and look at it and say, wow, there's a lot of things going on here. We just overlook them because it's just happening to us and we think it's normal, or it's not important. But when you look at it from the context of marketing, it's all there. I'm making a video. He's already on it. He's already on it. That's what I love about implementers.
Yep.
And the mind maps don't work for the illogical Scott. So there you go.
There you go. That's it.
That's the reason why. Thank you for being here on another Tuesday night. This is the place where you can hang out with Scott and I and a bunch of amazing humans who are just impacting the world, helping each
Okay.
other out. Just a great group. I love every person in that group, and would love for you, if you're not in that group, to be in that group with us. Especially if you're heart centered, because we can all help each other, support each other when the need is there, And it's just got a lot of really smart people in there who know their stuff and can help you with your business. Marketing Made Easy is on our 98th episode today. So thank you for being here. If you were here live, hashtag live, that would be great. Maybe give us a thumbs up or a heart or something that showcases that we're doing something of value for you, and showcases to Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and all that, wherever platform you're watching, that we're doing an okay job. And hopefully you will join us for at the next 2 episodes at least, because we're coming up to number 100 and got a big celebration coming up. Thank you for being here.
Tuesday, December 28th. Mark your calendars. It is show 100. That's a story in itself, that we've gone 100 in a row. We have not missed one Tuesday night.
Exactly, man.
That's a story in itself. And kind of like, I can bridge that to when I did 100 days straight of hot yoga. And someone was like, well, what'd you learn about that? I said, well, that I could do 100 days straight. Then I did 600 days. Like, well, what was the epiphany? That I could pretty much commit to anything and see it to the end. Now, are you willing to see it through the end? Because if you want to do it with somebody who definitely takes things to the end, no matter what the struggle is, and I'm just playing with this right now, then you should join my program, and I'm going to make sure that you do the same thing and you commit to it and you get the results at the end. I don't know what that was all about, but
yeah, and you're right. Like, I don't want to, because we can go another hour on this, but
yeah.
I mean, there's a whole thing of just coming to my mind is the support, or not even the support, but the trust in someone else. Like, I would spin that story because, hey, I've been doing this for a little while, and I know that every single Tuesday night when I press that live button, that my buddy Scott's going to be there, come hell or high water. Like, I mean, that to me, I go, if you don't have somebody like that in your life, you need somebody like that. That's a whole story right there.
That's a story
of a support system.
And then you could talk about how before that, I mean, I could be the explosion in this story, and I'm not putting me in, just the character of somebody that you've come to know and trust and rely on and love and care about, that hey, he's going to be there. I don't have to worry about it. Because in the past, there may have been a time when somebody didn't show up, or somebody turned to be a jerk face and, just wasn't. And it's like, what the hell? We have a story from a couple of weeks ago. We did a show. I kind of, felt a little uncomfortable. And then we talked about it the next day. And it was like we went through a new level of that. Well, all kinds of stories and lessons. Hey, sometimes you need to be uncomfortable to get comfortable. And maybe you need to be challenged. And maybe you need to reach out. That's all we do Tuesday nights, is tell stories for the most part, or we see other people's stories and comment on their stories. And since I've been on the platform thousands of times, it's always a story. And people at the end of the day, they don't really care what they learned. They want to know what were the stories, and they're going to remember a story, and they'll remember the lesson from the story. They're not going to remember your features and your benefits and your great sales copy, but they'll remember, hey, that time when Joey and Scott were talking about, when, Scott talked about the one day, Joey talked about his first thingy he did. And he had no clue what he was doing. And Scott talked about the first time that he stood before an audience and he stood still for 8 hours because somebody told him he should. And just, cool stuff, Joey.
Love you, man. I'll see you.
Love you too.
I'll see you next Tuesday for sure.
Looking forward to it.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next Tuesday.